Hi everybody, welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. My name is Maria and I'm here to help you make more quilts in less time with less stress. Now, I am using a new camera setup now, so I'm hoping that this works. I've pushed my desk a little further from the wall, so every time I turn, I'm not knocking stuff off the wall from behind me. But that meant that I mounted the camera on the opposite side instead of having it on my desktop. So we're going to give this a shot and see how it does. I'd like to start with an apology to you all. The last time I did this live stream, I don't know where my head went. I think I was wrapped up in the issues I was having with the block, and I mentioned it was the Super Bowl this last weekend. No, I knew it wasn't the Super Bowl. I know that was months ago. I don't know what happened. I was obviously having just a complete brain fry moment, so I apologize for that. I know it's March Madness, it's not the Super Bowl. But no, I just said something really stupid, and I'm not normally that far out of things, but the way this year has gone, it's not a huge surprise. If this is your first time here, welcome. I am a professional organizer as my day job, and so I always start with a tip of the day. I got an email from one of you viewers this last week saying that one of their problems with their productivity is that they have too many things on the to-do list, and they have a hard time figuring out what they should be working on. And so they spend so much time shoulding themselves that they never get to get anything done. They just spin their wheels. So I'm a huge fan of having a master task list. But that doesn't mean you have to tackle the whole thing today. So mine is in a half-sized 3-ring binder, so it's only about this big instead of the full size. And I have separate divider tabs, just like you would in a regular binder. The first one is errands, the second one is calls, the third one is, I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget, household or handyman. Then it's, the first one is dated activities, then errands, then calls, then household, long-term projects, and then business tasks. The dated stuff is up first, just so that I keep track of the fact that I have these things coming from down the road towards me, but not necessarily due today. But they all have, they're just listed by date, and then I color code them by month. So I know, like, January is all one color, February is all one color. I do have to plan that far out because, as some of you know, I do speak internationally now. And so I need to make sure that I'm going to have my presentations done on time and that kind of thing. So that's why they're all like that. With my errands, I put down where I'm going and what I need to do when I'm there. I have done things like put on my list to go to Lowe's, and I pull up and I can't remember what it was I needed to buy. So with my errands, it lists what I'm there to get, and if I need to remember to take a part with me because I need to get a replacement part. Phone calls is the name, the number, and why I'm calling. Because if I just say, call Bob Smith, well, now I have to stop, find Bob's number, remember why I needed to call him, etc. So it's all listed right there. It's the way I group everything. So then what I do is at the beginning of the day, I review my lists to see if there's anything coming up soon I need to work on, etc. I pick 3 things to accomplish during that day. It doesn't mean I'm going to get them all done. Yesterday, I had 2 things on my list, and I didn't get the second one done until really late because a bunch of other stuff just popped in out of nowhere. So I wound up having to take care of things I wasn't planning on taking care of. So that put a whole kibosh on my day. But there's only 3 things that go on my day's list. And then I take one of those 3 things, which is the most important, and that is the one that I make sure I accomplish that day. Then what's the second? What's the third? I also batch things together. So for example, the reason I have a call list is because I will say my task for today is to get caught up on all the phone calls. So I will be calling the guy to repair my fridge, and then somebody to give me an estimate on power washing my back deck, and all this kind of stuff, so that it's all laid out. Because once you're sitting there and you're on the phone, it's a lot easier just to make call after call after call and get them all done at once, and then they're finished. Now, I also will have next to me my English paper piecing stuff, so while I'm on hold, I'm not getting frustrated the fact that I'm sitting here like this the whole time. I put it on speaker, and I'll do some sewing or something like that, so that I feel like I'm still being productive even though I'm sitting on my can in my kitchen. So that's my productivity tip. Do not expect to accomplish more than 3 things in a day. And I will tell you, when you have kids over the summer, you'll be lucky to get one major thing that you can work on during the day, much less finish it. So be realistic. Hopefully, because we've talked about this before, you've started doing things like figuring out how long different tasks will take you, so that you can appropriately schedule them. But sometimes you just got to wing it. So have there been days where my one task was to write a chapter in my book and it took me 2 days to do it? Yep, it's happened. So, you have to be a little bit flexible with it, but this is one thing that will help you not get so overwhelmed. But since you have a master list, you haven't forgotten anything either. So hopefully that's a help. So that's our tip for today. This last Tuesday, I want to share this with you. Some of you are part of the group, so you know this. My SQU quilting group had another mystery quilter, and she was talking about how she went through quilt-a-pause. And that was when she went from doing Civil War reproduction fabrics into bright, cheerful colors. And I just wanted to say I love that phrase. And some of us will go through it many times during our quilting hobby career. The idea is we're going to transition from what we're doing to something new. And we may come back to the first thing. We may never come back to the first thing. There may be a third thing that we go to. And it's a wonderful thing when that happens. So be open to quilt-a-pause and to making changes and trying new things. So let me update you on the quilts. Hopefully this is going to work. It doesn't work as well as I'd like, but there we go. Actually, let me do this one first. So last time when we were here, I had trouble trimming up. Let me make this smaller again. Sorry. I had trouble with these blocks right here. I had already made them. They were fine. But when I trimmed them, they were off. And so I got frustrated. I think that's where the whole Super Bowl thing came from. So I just want to let you know, I redid this according to the instructions that I gave you for the second block of the month. And it came out just fine. It was the cutting angle, the fact that my sewing deck flexes, and it was 100% just a bad cutting arrangement. So when I did it properly, the block came out fine. So this is block 2. Now I'm going to put it over here with block 1. All right. Here we go. Up here are my full flowers. Actually, I'm going to move this camera. I'm going to have to move it back. So, no, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm going to try something different. I knew that was going to be a problem, so let me try this. You guys are my guinea pigs today. We'll go to camera 3, which normally looks at the desk. And I'm going to maneuver it instead. Okay, right up there on the right, you can see the flowers and the paths. Each one of those on the top are bundles of 5, and then there's the 3 lower ones and some arcs there. And then I have 2 wallfuls. Here we go. Of these guys. So what I've done, oops, is, let me come back to the regular. For each of the rest of the flowers, I've put together the first 2. The reason for this is that some of the flowers are going to be 2 different fabrics for their petals, and so I'm putting together these, and then I'm going through my bin when I have all the base parts of the flower done, petals. I will pick the centers. So these are all hanging up. There's 188 so far on the 280. No, 188. Sorry, 188 on the wall. There's the 53 on the wall there, There's some more downstairs that I'm still sewing together into the pairs. And then Tuesday, so yesterday, when I was at quilting, I'm going to try to move my camera again. Some friends came in, and some of you are probably on here actually. And they told me that they had been helping another friend who's downsizing, and she had 1-inch hexagon flowers that she didn't want anymore. And so they said, oh, they thought of me, and so they grabbed them, and then they gave them to me yesterday. So I thought I would show them to you. Because these are really cool. Some of these fabrics are a lot older than the other ones on the wall, but there's nothing wrong with that. You can see here that there's one fabric that's different, but you know what? That's fine. It adds some character to the quilt. So some of these fabrics are faded. You can tell, like, these were probably part of a pajama set, but these are really pretty cool. The only problem with these is that they've already removed the papers from the back, so they're not stiff anymore to be able to make it easier to sew. So what I will probably want to do later is to go through and pop hexagons back in these for the assembly phase. Now, these are not perfect. There are some of these that are off. I'm not sure why exactly, but they are. Like this one, this point is longer than it should be out this way, so it's almost like that hexagon had been miscut. If any of them don't work or don't take the paper hexagon, what I will do is I will unbaste it and then just baste the 3 sides that I'll tuck in where it's sewn, and then I'll just baste those 3 so I have that paper to help me attach it to the other flowers. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. But I thought you might like to see these because some of these are really cool fabrics, and they're not ones that you're going to be able to see, you know, just go into the store. And you guys have told me you like seeing some of the older fabrics or from other countries and things. So there are 24 of these. And like I said, there's a bunch downstairs that I just need to sew the pairs together. They'll go on the wall. And then what I'll do is I'll just pin the extra one under each until I've got them all done with their centers. Then I will pull them off the wall, clip the center to the top. I'm just using regular office type binder clips. You can see that here. Oops, here against my skin you can see it better. And that will keep all my pieces together so that when I'm traveling around or if I'm down in my seat downstairs sewing, I can pull one bundle up and sew that one particular flower and have all the pieces that I need. And then, but that won't be until I get the centers done. But this is a nice handy way to store all these. This is, however, the reason in particular why I moved my chair, because anytime I did this, I started knocking them off. But in order to have 100 in a row, I needed the space. So that's what's going on with the hexagon quilt, the Grandmother's Flower Garden. I'm still working on about 4 commission quilts right now, and I have a couple of other sewing projects that I'm working on, trying to finish some projects up. And if I'm also still working on my sewing room, which is not going splendidly, I can tell you that. Let me move camera 3 again. Here we go. I have gotten, oh yeah, that light here is a problem. You can see that some of my closet has been packed and filled up, but a lot of it has not, and I have not gotten to the shelves next to it. So it's coming along, but it could be better, and it will be better. My biggest issue right now is that my son still has a bunch of stuff in his room, and so I'm going to be using his room for storing things like, completed quilts. My projects are all going to go in the other room, because when they're in this room with me, unless I can close the door, they start to talk to me. And while that's normally a good thing, they're constantly pinging in my head, you haven't done this for a while, you're behind, get going, what's wrong with you? And nobody needs that in their life. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to permit that to happen. So I'm not I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. I have the chat that I sent. Hold on. Oh, well, that wasn't very helpful. I had a note here that I had sent out to you guys just before, like at 6:50, and I never actually hit the send button because it had gone off my screen. Sorry about that. So now you can see what I sent you before we started. But now we're here, so now if you type something, I'll be able to see it. Okay, so this month's block of the month. I promised you something a little bit more complex because our first two were fairly simple blocks, but that's because of everything that's been going on here. So this time, I actually did the block two different ways. When I post the instructions, which should be tomorrow, there's two parts to it. There's the block number 3, the 5-pointed star, and then there's this template page. Yeah. No, you can't see that. Let me switch to camera 3. Okay, this template page. So when you are going to do this, you're going to want to pull down the template as well as the instructions for block number 3, the 5-pointed star. So the first way I did it, actually the second way I did it, was the English paper piecing that I told you about. This is it. So what I did was I took the template, I made the points the size I wanted, I stitched the middles together once these were on paper, and then I appliqued the whole thing down onto a basic 12.5 piece of fabric. This is not the colors for the quilt that I'm doing. This was just so that you'd be able to see it really clearly. If you chose to, you could English paper piece the whole thing, but the corners get kind of odd. The top of the page 3 instructions shows you what it looks like with just the seams that come off the points. So what I'm going to do now is switch to a PowerPoint that I did. There it is. Okay, so what you're looking at here is, let me hopefully, here we go. I cut out, well, I taped the template onto some cardstock. Now you could just print it on a heavier gauge paper. That's completely up to you. But I did it on the cardstock, and then I just put the 5 of them together. There's 2 lines here. They're kind of faint. Hold on. You might not be able to see my arrows here. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, so there's some faint lines here and here. That's because I took a 12.5-inch ruler and I put it yeah, I can't tell if it's on there. I put the star in that. So this is the 5-inch petals, or star points. Let's call them star points. I also did it in 6-inch, but because the 6 inches is so large, it cannot sit square, or it will bump right up to the edge of your finished square. And if you're off at all, you'll chop the point off, or you'll wind up with a huge bump right there. So I would recommend, if you're going to do 6 inches, you skew it. So the most important measurement is from the center out to the first corner on each side. Those need to match. However, they don't need to match, in your final star, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So if you're going to do English paper piecing, you take your star point, you put on your fabric, you trim the fabric to approximately 1/4 inch all the way around, and then you baste it down. Now, on longer sections, I recommend that you go across like you're seeing here, not just going around the edges, unless you are willing to pierce through the paper with your basting thread and go all the way through and all the way back. I like to have the front stay clean, so I don't have to worry about it if there's any problems later. If I'm not going across like this, I will often leave the basting stitches in place and just pull out the paper. In this case, you have to remove the stitches. But by going across like this, it's only the fabric. I'm catching none of the paper. So I just looped it around, and that meant that all of my sides were nice and straight and clean when I was ready to sew it together. So once the center was sewn together, then I basted it down onto the background material. You can see it here after it was appliqued down. You can see the seams, and you can also see the papers are still there, right? Because we've taken the right side of the fabric and it's facing up, so the wrong side is pressed up against our background fabric. So whenever you do this, then what you do is you trim approximately 1/4 of an inch away from your stitching line. And the scissors I had did not cut to the tip, so it's raggedy, but with the fabric being red on top, you'll never see it, so it doesn't matter. I then cut the basting stitches, and then I pulled the papers out, and it was fine. Okay? Actually, that's the wrong photo, I'm sorry. Now, the way I actually sewed the one that's going into the quilt is I started with a template, and I determined how far I wanted it to be from the interior point to the first angle, because that had to be the same. So I went to the 2-inch mark. The cool thing about this is that as long as those points match, you can do anything with the other points. You can make some longer, you can make some shorter. That doesn't matter. So what I did is, in my particular case, I took the papers. I'll show you here. Back to camera 1. So hopefully you can see this. I can't see this when I'm showing it to you. I took these papers and I cut them out on the lines, okay, for the wedge, and then here's the center. And then back to the PowerPoint. And then I put them together like this. Then I put my ruler down on top and I marked it. So now you can see what the papers looked like when they were marked. The outer edge of the ruler is the outer lines here, and then the sewing lines are in 1/4 of an inch. And I marked them that way so I would remember and not mess it up later. Okay? Oops. Hold on. Okay. So, hopefully that all made sense. Now, once I had those done like this, I went ahead and I sketched in how big I wanted the various points to be. I folded on the lines, and then I simply paper pieced my star together. Now, you have to remember, and I marked it here, that this was the sewing line versus a trimming line. So you have to add your seam allowance on there. But when you do, like I said, they can be different sizes. So here on mine, my top star point is 5 inches, 5.5, something like that. The 2 up here are 6.5, and the 2 bottom ones are 8. So they are different lengths. But because you can draw those lines wherever you want, as long as the 2 lines that go up the middle meet, they can be any size you want as long as they're going to fit in the box. So if you wanted to, you could make them very short and skinny. It's really nice and flexible. So this is our block for this month, the 5-pointed star. Either a regular one, an irregular one like mine, or you could have it be really wacky, whatever you want. But like I said, I used a 2-inch from here to here. Okay? So this is our star for this month. If there are any questions, email me. You can write to me at mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com. and ask me, and then when we meet again in 2 weeks, I'll be able to answer any questions that you've had. And I'll answer it for everybody in case they didn't get a chance to ask me themselves. There was something else I was going to show you. This is a Kleenex box. Okay? And well, you can't quite see it, but I cut basically, well, here, let me pull it off the wall. This is my design wall, if this is your first time here. I pinned this on. So I just cut the box on an angle like this, and then I used pins to put them into my design wall. And here are the binder clips, that I'm going to need to hang the rest of my flower pieces. This is a quick and dirty, easy way to do it. I had just enough so I can see how many more that I'm going to need. And it will really make things handy to have it right there on the wall instead of having to go and get them and bring out my big drawer of them. So something you might want to consider when you're doing a project is just taking an empty dead box and turning it into a storage cubby. I love free. So if you didn't know that about me yet, you now know it. Is there anything else I wanted to cover on the star? I don't think so. Oh, I apologize. Your actual template does not have the seam allowances on there, on this part of the wedge, because if you wanted to just paper piece using this, I didn't want extra lines getting in your way. You could just simply use this as a paper piecing tool as is. So I just wanted to make sure I told you that. Okay, so the last time I was here, I told you about my trip to London, and I asked if people would like to see souvenirs, and I think it was Judy who mentioned it here in the chat, but I did get some emails as well, so I thought I would go over some of my souvenirs that I brought from London, keeping in mind that I didn't get to see much of the city other than the conference and a couple of activities that I did. So I don't actually have any London souvenirs other than the coffee mug that my son bought of the London Tube when he was 8. But that was it. So, but it wasn't from this trip, so I didn't bring it to show. For those of you who don't know me, I am a huge Harry Potter fan. Now, I am aware that J.K. Rowling has said some unfortunate things. Let's leave it at that. So there are a bunch of people who are very, very unhappy with her now. I get it. I am not happy with what she said. I'm still a huge fan of the series. So I'm kind of stuck in a little bit of a conundrum there. But I was in London. And so before the conference that I went to, I went a couple of days early so that I could adjust to the time and things like that. And I went to see the play that she did after she did the Harry Potter movies. It's called Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. It's actually 2 complete plays. So that was kind of bizarre because you can see the first one at like 2 o'clock. Well, I have my tickets right here. Part 1 was at 2 in the afternoon, and part 2 was at 7. So you would go in and you would watch the first play, and then you could hang out there in the theater if you wanted to for several hours. Or you could do what we did, which was we left, we did some shopping, we got something to eat, that kind of stuff, and then we came back for part 2. So before part 1, I bought the souvenir book because it had some really nice photos and things in it. And then when we came back, I looked over and they had these souvenir books, which were even cooler with a lot more photos and storylines and stuff like that. And so I asked them about it, and they said, well, there's spoilers in this one, so they only sell it before the second play. I said, well, I just bought this one. Can I trade? And they said no. Great, thanks. So I now have both. uh, the play itself was amazing. When we read the play originally, I had said there's no way they can be switching between all of these locations that we're reading about in the play. It's not possible. You can't change sets that fast. They did a really good job. It was truly impressive. There was wire work. There was all kinds of stuff. And they did it beautifully. Had a great time with that. So I have my souvenir books from that. Then we did the conference. And so it was the next day, it was conference. And so I set up my table and I had a couple of books on demo so that people could look at them and decide if they wanted to order them. I just gave them QR codes so that they could order them and have them shipped directly to their homes. And I didn't have to worry about converting pounds to dollars, adding shipping and taxes. And do I have to pay taxes in London, or do I only pay taxes in the US, or do I not pay taxes anywhere? I just didn't want to worry about it. So I'm like, order it. Here you go. So, so it was funny because one of the ladies, probably the second person I talked to, asked to buy the books. And I said, they're my only demos. I just now put them out there. You can have them at the end if you want, but not until the last day. And so she said, fine. So, got that all done. She bought the books at the very end. It was wonderful. And then the next morning, we went to the Warner Brothers studios where the Harry Potter movies were actually filmed. And there's 2 large studio buildings, and then in between is where they have the food court, and outside are all the outside props. So some of them are little tiny things, and some of them are big, full-sized. So, for example, there's that really weird bridge that's kind of at all angles and they twists and turns. They have a chunk of that right there. So you can go on it, and it's actually a lot of fun. I got the digital guides for us, and we spent hours there. I could have spent a lot longer. But poor Madalena, who was with me, is not that much of a Potterhead, so I knew she wanted to do some shopping for her family, so we left a little early. But while we were there, I watched a class on how they do green and blue screens and when they use them and how they work. And at the end, if you wanted, you could get one of Harry Potter's invitations to go to Hogwarts. So that was cool. And then at a later place, you can sit down and you can make your own howler. So I made a howler. It really does need the ribbon, so it could go. She also suggested that if you want it to look meaner, you can turn the corners down and up so that they look like teeth in the corners. So that was just fun. So we made the howlers. And then Madalena had been buying something. I don't remember what. It was a gift for one of her kids. And I saw that they had these bags for the Daily Prophet. And so I said, that's really kind of cool. So I was going to pay the 5 pence it was going to take to get the bag. But she added it to her bill, so that was a really sweet thing for her. So I did that. And then I had not only pre-purchased the digital guide, but I pre-purchased the official guide. So I have this. These studios were where they actually did the filming. So the Gryffindor common room was the common room that they filmed in. The Great Hall is there. There's a whole bunch of stuff that is just the original stuff is still there, so that was really cool. So this is a lot more of the actual filming and things. Diagon Alley is there. You can actually go up the hill into the various shops and things. And then I got because you're all quilters, you'll understand, I got the big tote bag. Because this is big enough to hold quilts and things in it when I'm carrying stuff. So those were the things that I got. I also bought a butterbeer. Now, I've had butterbeers at the Universal Studios, both in California and in Florida. But I got a butterbeer, and it comes in a commemorative mug. It's not as good there. It's a lot better in in Florida and in California. It must be a completely different formula. Um, but the mug is kind of cute, and it was nice to have tried it and to know. But definitely better where I was before. One thing I forgot to mention is that when we got back from the Harry Potter Cursed Child at like 10 something at night, no, it was 11:30. Excuse me. There was a gift for me in my room. I didn't bring all of it. It was all wrapped in cellophane, and it had a sign on it. Here it is. Here's a cuppa from us to you. Sit down, relax, and have a brew. Dip or nibble with a biscuit too. With love from the APDO crew. Apto crew. So there was a teacup on a saucer, this spoon, a small tin of loose tea that I've already gotten into, and this tin of lemon biscuits, which are cookies. I have not gotten into these. I keep being tempted, but I haven't yet. I'm trying to be good. Save them for a special occasion. I actually brought the spoon home because it's a little bit oddly shaped for me. I'm going to switch cameras here. So, if you can see it in profile, it dips down quite a bit before it goes across, and then it's incredibly shallow. So, I just thought that was an interesting spoon. I know it's not pricey, I know it's not an heirloom, I know it's not anything special, except that I didn't have one and I thought it was kind of cool, so I brought it home to show. So those are my souvenirs from London, other than, of course, the photos of Apto and everybody else. I took a ton of photos out bus windows and things like that. I tried to catch some of the architecture and things like that. I have not had a chance to take those photos and put them into the PowerPoint for you. I thought it was more important to have the PowerPoint done with the parts to this star than to worry about the photos of the architecture. So I am going to try to get that done for next time, but I can't promise. It may be that it never gets done. And I understand you guys will understand and appreciate given everything that's going on here. So, all in all, those are my things. I do want to go back to London. I told Scott that if I get invited back, and they probably won't have me back next year because I was a keynote speaker, so I spoke to everyone, and I was talking about hoarding disorder. Unless I come up with a couple of other cool things that they'd like to hear about, it'll probably be 2 or 3 years before I go back to talk about hoarding. So when I go back, I want to take Scott with me. But now I know where in relation to things are, we would want to stay to do things like the Warner Brothers Theater. So, studios. So we would stay further out of London instead of staying in London proper. And then we'd be able to go and spend the whole day at the studios and just take our time. So that'll be really good if we can do that. But all in all, I did have a really good time. I'm glad that I did it. I'm hoping to go back, and we'll see what happens. You know, I'm staying completely open. Even if you don't count the fact that Scott didn't go with me and the cost of the flights and all of that, because I was paid to go and speak, but I was not paid so much that it covered all my costs. It was still worth it. It really was. I'm very glad that I did that, because I gave my speech on hoarding, and then I did a workshop on communication skills and some different fun games and things like that we did. So it was pretty lighthearted and fun and bubbly, so I had a good time. Okay, so that is it for London. Okay, other than that, what's going on? Oh, so this isn't a lighthearted thing. But I've talked on this channel before about how important it is to get your legal documents done. So I just want to say that I am not a do what I say, not what I do kind of person. I'm not that kind of thing. I had an attorney friend of mine who's an elder law attorney review my plans. That's when we found out that the attorney we had originally used has been disbarred for all kinds of heinous activity that we didn't know about. Luckily, none of it was anything he did for us. It was apparently the last, 5 to 10 years or so that he went off the rails. So he did a lot of questionable things. So he's been disbarred. So I was just as glad that we were redoing this anyway. But Jonathan is 28. He no longer lives in the house. We are not paying for insurances, cars, or anything like that anymore. So it's time to redo the will. Now, we really could have redone it when he turned 18. We took him to get his documents done when he was 18. However, we did not redo ours at the time. Part of what we had in our documents were that if we died, he would not get all of the money and the trust would not dissolve until he was 30. Because that boy, he could not keep money in his pocket. But it was amazing to us. He went off to college and a light turned on and he's amazing now. So we were happy to get rid of that. But because he's no longer in insurance and he doesn't need to be maintained in any way, it was time to redo. So we have gone, and this last weekend, we reviewed all of our legal documents. Actually, last weekend. We reviewed all of our legal documents, and then we had a Zoom call with the attorney, and we went over everything. We asked our questions. It took like an hour for her to answer all of our questions. And I've been a power of attorney. I've dealt with wills before. Like when my mom died, I was her executor. So I already had some of the basic knowledge, but Gretchen just went over the top. There is nothing that's not covered. And so we have our wills, our trusts, our medical powers of attorney, and our financial powers of attorney done. At this point, she's going to make the revisions that we have. And so within the next couple weeks, we should be out there, get everything signed, and be finished. I did have somebody ask me if we did this because of Scott's diagnosis, and the answer is no. We actually had it on the calendar to do last year. It was part of the plan. But then things got really weird, and I was doing this channel, which I hadn't been planning on before, and there was a bunch of stuff going on. So we decided to wait until January. And in fact, in November, I called Gretchen and I said, okay, I promised I wouldn't bother you about this stuff until January. And then she said, is this about this client? And I'm like, no. I said, I want to get on your calendar for the beginning of January. So I got on her calendar and it was already planned. So even though Scott got his diagnosis before we saw her, that is not why we were doing this. There are different times in life. It's really good to review and change your documents. For example, digital assets weren't a big deal when we got our documents done and Jonathan was small. Because I didn't have a YouTube channel, I didn't have the books that I had written, I didn't have a bunch of the materials that I've made. Social media wasn't a thing. So I've learned over time that I really wish that my mom and other family members had known to give digital rights in their wills to someone or their trusts, because I still get birthday notices for my mother and for an uncle of mine, and it bothers me, but there's nothing I can do about it. If I'm on Facebook, it's going to come up and it'll say, my mom, her birthday is tomorrow or today. And I have to just ignore it, but it's still... Whew. So, in my legal documents that we have now, it gives the trustee all of the power to access all my social media, change things to memorial sites or just take them down or recover the photos. Keep in mind if you have the iPhotos or you have any sort of cloud or some service you're using to store your photos, if you pass away, nobody else can get to them. It's actually in the terms that if they know that you've passed away, they lock the accounts. You need somebody to have that power to go in and access those accounts and download your music and that kind of stuff and give it to whoever you want to give it to. Especially, family films, family photos, you want those to stay. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that didn't exist. So that was another reason why I wanted to go ahead and redo my documents. And if you haven't done yours, please consider doing them. I know it's a little preachy, I'm sorry, but it is one of those things that I'm doing myself because it's so stinking important, and it makes life so much easier for the person who's left behind if they know what it is you want, what you want done. That also includes if I'm incapacitated. Let's say Scott and I are in a car crash, he passes away, but I live. If I am in the hospital for 6 months, Jonathan needs rights to be able to do things because he was my successor trustee. Scott would be the original. He needs the powers to do things. So that's what this stuff is all about. Please consider it if you haven't. But that's one of the things that I've been doing. Like I said, I've been working on the sewing room. It's not getting very far very fast, honestly. I've been working on stuff like the star and stuff for you guys for this year. I've also been asked to do a pop-up demonstration at my guild. On Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a whole demo on binding. And so I'm going to be doing self-binding quilts, which basically means you don't use the double fold binding we normally do. You just roll the back to the front. But I'm going to show them how to do the corners and stuff. I'm going to talk about basic binding if anybody needs to know that. I'm going to talk about flanged bindings, oversized bindings, and strip-pieced bindings. And I don't mean stripped as in you're just adding them together in a long chain. I'm talking about where they go this way, across the binding instead of lengthwise. So not only did I make up the samples for all of that this week, but I also had to created a 4-page handout. So all of that is this coming Tuesday, so that's something else I've been working on. I'm going to show some quilts that I have, but mostly having the samples so that people can see them I think is going to be helpful. So I've been working on that. I've been working on some presentations I'm going to be giving later in the year. Applying for other speaking gigs that I want to get later in the year. So it's very, very busy here at Maria's house. But all in all, it's better to be busy with things that you enjoy. So doing the quilting stuff is fine. It's all the stuff for this binding pop-up I've been meaning to do since pretty much January, but all of the medical stuff with Scott, I've just lost all those days. So, and I don't begrudge it a bit because he's worth every minute of my time. No questions there. But it does throw a monkey wrench into the stuff that you had planned. There's an old saying, if you want to watch God laugh, make a plan. Now, I am a planner. It's what I do. It's what keeps me from having my head explode. But every once in a while, yeah, I think somebody's chuckling at me. But because I have a plan, I also have a recovery plan. And so I don't get too far off track. So I'm managing to cover all the things that I have to. I'm still doing this the twice a month like I promised you guys, and I will continue to do so. But it does make for some interesting weeks. I'm not doing a whole bunch of extra stuff. I've stopped taking new commissions right now so that I don't have to worry about that as much. And I'm just trying to make sure that I'm taking care of my organizing company. I'm doing the stuff here for you guys. I'm occasionally getting to my quilt guild. I'm taking care of Scott, and I'm spending some time taking care of me. Um, that's what my quilting does for me. Whether it's a commission or it's not a commission, the fact that I get my tushy in here and I sit down at the machine and I crank some stuff out really makes a difference. When I'm having a really bad day, if I'm just having a grumpy, stomp around the house kind of day, Scott has been known not too subtly to say, Maria, yes, go upstairs and sew until dinner. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll bring you lunch. Don't come down. And I'll say, am I that bad today? And he goes, go upstairs and sew. I will bring you your lunch. Which, especially right now, is tough for him. So I'll say, no, I'll come down for lunch and then I'll go back up. But I do need that time to recharge my batteries so that I can then be out there for everyone else. So I'm hoping that quilting does for you what it does for me. And if you're just watching this because you're not a quilter, you like to sew, or you just like to watch a crazy woman ramble about things, whatever reason you're here, I'm so happy that you are. I'm glad that you joined the StashBlaster Quilts YouTube family. I was crushed, okay, not truly crushed because I know it happens, but when I saw that somebody had unsubscribed, I was like, oh. But it happens. We'll get other ones to replace them. But I do know that those of you that are here are my core people. You're the ones that that get something from this, and so I'm very happy to be here for you. I am never going to grow this thing to 1 million subscribers or anything wild like that. This is not going to be my full-time job unless something really weird happens. Which it is for some people. It's amazing how many people out there between Patreon memberships, AdSense, which you can get through the YouTube itself, all these other things. They actually, it's a full-time job for them, and it pays their bills. I just find that fascinating. I am never going to have my income and my lifestyle dependent on this channel because I'm never expecting to make anything off of it. But it'd be nice if it happened someday. There is one thing though. I did mention last time about potentially doing a long-term. Let me rephrase because that applies multiple days. Long days where I would sit and sew. I would work on a project. I would just turn the camera on so that you can watch what I'm doing, and I would just sew all day. And I got a surprising number of you who said you were interested in that. So I'm looking into how to do that. Doing it as a live stream, because we're talking like 4 or 8 hours, isn't really going to work. Because of the way the whole system works. So I've had some people suggest to me Patreon and some other things. So I may wind up doing it through a different portal. I'm just letting you know that now. I have not decided to do that. But I can have a no-pay portal. So Patreon works where you can have several different levels, and the more people pay, the more access they have to you, basically, or you can give them things like stickers or other things that they can put in the chats and things like that that make them stand out. So if you're not used to Patreon, that is something you can do. It would also allow people who wanted to send me actual funds to help me out, but that's a monthly charge. But I think I can set up, and I'm investigating this now, how a zero cost Patreon level. And so if I decide that that'll work and I can make it work, then what we could do is set it up where on a regular basis, and I'm not sure whether we can set out alerts. I've never done anything with Patreon, which is why I'm telling you this. It may be kind of like here where it's all filmed live and then you can go and watch it whenever you want. I might need to do it through there, so I'm just letting you know. at which point I will let everybody know about it. I will probably do an edited clip, so that it'll be in the regular video section. I'll let you know here as well. But that would, I'd be able to put the data in there. On a live stream, you can't really add to the comment section very much the way that I've been doing it. Of course, I need to learn more, and when I have time, I will. But I know I can do it on a regular video. So that's where I could put this is where you go, this is when I'm planning on doing it kind of information. So that's what's going on with that. I have not forgotten. I'm working on it when I can. And I will hopefully have something where we can do that in maybe 4-hour half days, where you can watch it. Maybe I'll be designing a quilt and you can watch me go through the entire designing process. That's probably one that I'll do more like the live stream, where I'll be talking the whole time, versus just, you know, having on my headphones, and I'll be listening to a book on tape or something, but you'll be listening to the sound of the machine and watching the fabric go, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where that stands right now. We are on track still for the block of the month. This one is very simple looking, but it is more complex than the other two we did in the actual assembly. There will be some other more complex blocks coming up that'll take a little bit longer to do. There's a couple there that might be easier to do some English paper piecing or foundation paper piecing or not. So I'm trying to work on those as well to make sure that those are going to be up on time. The goal in general is the first Wednesday of the month I will show you the new block. I will also then either do what I did today and show you the steps that I took, or I'll actually sew some of the more complex things in front of you. And then on the second one, anything I didn't get done on the first one will finish the block. But that's going to be one of those, it may all be done the first one, it may not. The directions are usually going to be posted within a couple of days of the live stream. If you go to StashBlasterQuilts.com, there's an annual quilts tab. You click on that, and then you go to 2024, and that's where you'll see block 1, block 2, block 3, and there will be the 5-point star template, because you're going to want the 5-point star template and block 3, to make the block, the star block. You can also see the 2023 mystery quilt that we did here as a group. I did not do the 2022, partially because I hadn't figured out how to do that yet on getting it up on the website and in the different days, because it was kind of a weird thing that we did. You're welcome to go back and watch the videos. But that was something where we kept making changes and doing things all along the way, and so that made it a little bit more challenging. And it was not as... people did not enjoy that one as much as they liked the last one, and hopefully this one. So you're welcome to go back, but that's what this is. Something else that I'm doing new in the instructions, I did not do this last year, is I am including the live stream air date when I'm talking about that particular block. So this one has today and 2 weeks from today, right up near the top. So if you want to do this and then later come back and watch what I said and did with the papers in front of you, you'll be able to do that. So that's what's going on with that. It is almost time. If you're new here and you've stuck it out, thank you. This is kind of how it goes. There's always the tip, there's the what's going on with the quilts, there'll be the block that we're doing as a group for the quilt that we're doing for the year, miscellaneous other updates, and then we'll just go on from there. Usually there are a few comments in the chat. There isn't tonight. You are more than welcome to post comments or ask questions there as well as in the email. But I do want to respect your time. So I try to start the live stream about 15 minutes in advance so you have time to get the alert and get settled in when we start at 7. And I do try to end by 8 o'clock just to make sure that I am respecting it. So it is 8 o'clock right this moment. So I will see you in 2 weeks. Have a lot of fun sewing, and I hope you are all happy, healthy, and all goes well for you. See you soon. Bye-bye.